Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of the Deep Bass Podcast, where we take a hard look at the element that makes or breaks video games, the music. I'm Peter Thomas, and I'm joined by my co-host, Cody Haltom, and we're happy to have you along with us on our journey through Final Fantasy X. We're here. We did it.
I'm here via the power of the internet. I am here.
That's
we
right.
have made it to episode 1 after so long. I'm so excited to actually sit down and talk to you about this because we have a lot to talk about. My
goodness, I can't agree more. I've been wanting to do this ever since we talked about it, that year and a half ago. It's something that's, near and dear to my heart. I listen to video game music all the time. Honestly, it's almost my personal preference. And people look at me weird when it's playing out of my car.
I, on the other hand, I think we touched on this in our history, just over the years that we've known each other. I don't listen to music. Like, I listen to video game music as I play it, and I've been a huge video game player for, all of my life. But for me, I listen to morons sitting around a table and talking all the time. So for me, it's been nice to kind of go through and re-examine some of these tracks, and specifically soundtracks, because I got one honorable mention that I need to talk to you about at some point in this show.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too. One of the things that I love about when you sit down and listen to a soundtrack that's, while it's outside of the game, you do think about the moments and times when that stuff happens, but you don't realize how much of it you miss, whether that's because it's playing over a storyline or, you're in the middle of something stressful or anything like that. You don't hear all the nice little juicy tidbits and elements that really make the track stand out. And then you pull all that away, pull everything out of the game, and you just listen to the music, and that's it. You're just like, oh, wow. They really did a great job with this.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And it's going to be interesting as we go through, especially with some of the games that we have on the list. We started with this very first one, Final Fantasy X, because it's a really important game for you, and it's an important game for me. So let's tell them a little bit about when the game came out and that kind of stuff, and then let's start this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Final Fantasy X was originally released in 2001 for Sony's PlayStation 2. It was then re-released as Final Fantasy X 10-2 HD Remaster, which is a mouthful, for PlayStation 3 and Vita in 2013, for PlayStation 4 in 2015, and for Windows in 2016, and then finally for the Switch and Xbox One in 2019. And I am embarrassed and proud to say that I own, I think, a copy on every single one of those systems.
I judge you. You basically bought every copy of the Final Fantasy version of Skyrim.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yes.
And I judge you for it immensely.
You know what? That's okay. That's okay. It's one of those games where it's just I can't not support them for putting it out, and I've got to have it. So, one of the things I'd like to know a little bit about, and I'm sure everybody else would like to hear too, is tell me a little bit about what kind of I guess what's your history with it? What was the first time you experienced it? Tell me a little bit about your encounter, I guess, with Final Fantasy X.
This is my first everything, and I'm about to list it out for you because I'm not exaggerating. I ended up getting this game. This was my first PlayStation game, not PlayStation 2, PlayStation game. This was my first Final Fantasy. This was my first JRPG. So I first played this at my grandparents' house Christmas morning in South Padre Island, Texas, on a small little, those TVs that have the VCR combo?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I was playing that on one of those at a dining room table. So
kudos to you for reading that font.
I know. Especially when we got to the Al bed, I just said, screw it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my history with it. It's back in the day, God, I was in high school when this game came out, but I couldn't tell you what year I actually got it.
Okay.
but I was in high school when it came out, and I just remember coming home from school and playing it because back in the day, like you got one system, or at least I got one system in one game, and that game had to last you a while. So like it would be the only thing you would play for months. So being a brand new system and the quote unquote launch title that you got for it, it took over a significant chunk of my life.
Right. Yep.
How many times have you actually? I know you own it. Have you beaten it on every system?
No. The newer ones I still haven't gone to yet. But I have beaten it on the PS2, which took me a few tries to get to. I'll get into that more in a bit. And then I beat it on the PS3. And the PS3 was actually the one I went the most hard on because I was also streaming on Twitch. So I had a bunch of people there who were like helping me out with getting all the celestial weapons and things like that. They were kind of coaching me along to get one of the things I wanted to do, since it's my favorite, was get the platinum trophy. But for those who are unaware of the trophies that they made in Final Fantasy X, they have you doing some of the hardest things. So I know most.
Oh my God, it's so egregious.
Yeah, I know most of the people are fans of Final Fantasy VII, for example. So if I can relate it to that, it would be the equivalent of, doing the ruby and emerald weapons, or whatever might be the most challenging. I've heard people say that's the most challenging. I've never actually done it, so I'm just gonna kind of go with that. But yeah. So I have beaten it a couple of times, but like I said, the PS4 version and the Switch version still have not beaten it there yet.
Okay, that's interesting because like I did this weird thing. Okay, because like I said, it was my first Final Fantasy, right? First JRPG. I know nothing. Like I am the shooter guy. I am the action adventure guy. I'm the platformer guy. Yeah. RPG, hell. Like the closest thing I got to an RPG was Legend of Zelda. Okay. So that's my background with it. So when I was playing it for the first time, I just ran straight through. Like I didn't know what grinding was or anything like that. And this, what is it? The sphere grid. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue, no earthly idea. And you cannot get anywhere in that game unless you know how to operate the game mechanics, which I didn't. I was just like, oh, I'm a gamer. I'll just go through and play it. So I didn't beat it as a teenager. I would get to... Do you remember the airship worm dragon fight that's right before Yuna's wedding?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where I was stuck, where the only things that were spawning once I like knew how to do the systems and everything were not the enemies I need, to like drop the spheres that I needed in order to progress to actually beat the stupid thing. So I got there and quit. And then I revisited it in my 20s. I couldn't tell you when. And actually sat down and did finally finish it. But it did take me... I had to take a break from it for a minute because that one stupid worm fight really annoyed the hell out of me.
It's funny that you say that because I am not a stranger, or was not a stranger, to JRPGs when I picked up 10, and I still had a hard time because of the sphere grid. So, the structure, the structure behind the sphere grid is deceptive because leveling is not the traditional, like you start off at level 1 and you get to level 100. And then along that progression, you're getting stronger because you watch your levels grow. And in 10, they chose to do the sphere grid. So you gain sphere levels and then you spend sphere levels to move along the sphere grid. And I didn't realize that that was what was making you stronger. And, there's no real way to gauge that along the way. So, yeah, I mean, my first time playing on the PS2, I quit at Mount Gagazet because I was severely underleveled, at least according to the game. And I was getting like 1 or 2 shotted at, the creatures that were up there. I mean, it was a disaster for me. So, yeah, I ended up putting it down for, I think it was like close to 2 years, then picked it back up. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to treat this like a normal Final Fantasy, and I am going to grind a little bit more. spend some time, hanging out in areas and moving along the sphere grid, and it made a world of difference. I didn't realize that I was missing that whole piece, but yeah. So don't feel bad. Like I said, I felt like I was pretty weathered in JRPGs and still had a hard time at my first go of it. So yeah, it was interesting.
Hey, but we both beat it, so we can say that. I don't have a single platinum to my name, but I'm thinking the game I'm playing right now might be. We'll see about that. But yeah, like anytime, like I still get like a JRPG itch where I'm like, man, you know what? I could really go for some Final Fantasy X because I own it on PlayStation 4 and obviously PlayStation 2.
Yep.
And so I'll pop it in every once in a while, and I always, for whatever reason, I'll play it, and then I get to the Thunder Plains and I stop. And it's just at that point that it's nothing against the Thunder Plains or anything like that. It's just, all right, the itch has been scratched, and I'm just genuinely done, like not interested in playing the game anymore at that point.
I like how you said it's not anything to do with the Thunder Plains, and meanwhile, it's like everybody hates the Thunder Plains. I'm just like, yeah, sure, it's not the Thunder Plains.
No, I swear, hand to God, it's not that. It's unrelated. Because, I mean, I don't want to play anything after. It's just my interest. Because you got to think, once you get to that point, it's been a couple hours.
Yeah.
I mean,
and a lot of people, they complained about this game being more linear than other Final Fantasies, but I never really felt restricted because of that. I enjoyed the progression. I thought it moved at a nice pace. I never felt like I was being guided as far as like a rail game is concerned. Did you ever feel like that at all?
I didn't even know that was a complaint. And to those who have that complaint, please go look at 13 and come back and have a conversation with us.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Because that game is linear. Like maybe I can kind of see it.
Sure.
Because I went back and I like played 7, 8, 9 being my favorite.
Yeah.
And all the modern ones that aren't online.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that if you're a fan coming from 7, because that was so many people's launch point, right?
Yep.
So if you're going from 7 to 8 to 9, 3 open world games to this, I can kind of see that critique, I guess.
Sure.
But as someone who is new walking into everything, I'm like, this is fine. This is just what the game is. It was more a game that I was used to playing, where it is more linear. You're going from point A to point B, and they kind of fix that, quote unquote, fix in 10.2 with the airship, where you can actually go to different places and that kind of stuff, and it opens it up a bit. But no, I didn't have any issue with it. I didn't know that was the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I felt the same way. It's like I understand what people are saying, because it's not like it's this hidden mechanic, right? I mean, it very clearly walks you along a path. You go through, Xanarkand and then, Besaid and so on and so forth. Like, it walks you through for sure, but it just never felt like it was a game that was on rails to me. I never felt so restricted to the point where I was like, why is it making me do this when I want to be doing that? Like, I was just like, oh yeah, I absolutely want to go to the next place because I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's happening.
I think a good way to put it, and I nearly exploded because I just thought about it. The way that 10 is done is this is a story that's driven by narrative, where I think some of the older games that people have been used to have been structured around game mechanics instead.
Right. Yeah. And and it's not to say that narrative is missing in 7 through 9, for example.
No, not at all.
But it is definitely not the focus. I mean, this is the first game for a lot of things. This is the first game for voice acting. This is the first game for those kind of cutscenes. The nice integrated cutscenes that aren't just like CGI images or whatever. So there's a lot that they were doing different, and I think the way that the gameplay is set up, it really worked well with the formula that they had together.
Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely great game, and with an amazing soundtrack that, yes, I did listen to this thing, which is more than 4 hours long. 89 tracks on this thing. Are you kidding me?
I almost feel like it's unfair that I picked this game. I know it worked well for us because, it's my favorite Final Fantasy. It is your favorite as well. Am I correct?
No, 9 is my favorite. This is my first.
Right,
so
right.
that's why we decided to go with this one.
Right. Okay. So your first, my favorite. So it was a good starting point for us to open up a podcast with and everything like that. And I almost feel like I was at an unfair advantage because before this, I can honestly say I've listened to the 10 soundtrack from beginning to end at least 50 to 75 times. I almost know it like the back of my hand at this point. It's bad. I listen to it so much, but I love it. It's near and dear to my heart, and I really enjoy it. So.
Yeah, it is a good soundtrack. I know we're about to get into our top 5 list here. Mm-hmm. But the way I did it was I was just laid on my sofa. I had it going on my TV, right? Just laying there, playing some Animal Crossing, chilling. And because I didn't know what we would be talking about, what you would pick, when I would pick, I don't know the soundtrack like the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. Like I know moments in the game, I know where certain themes play and that kind of thing, but that's about the extent of it. I don't know track names or anything like that. So I had to go through and I got 6 pages of notes on this stupid thing just so that we were covered. So let's get started and dive into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the way we're going to structure this is, we're going to go talk about our top 5 favorite tracks, which is, again, very challenging to do. And it's going to be challenging to do in all of our games because how do you pick just 5? It's like saying picking your favorite children. It just doesn't work, except, we don't like our one child. No, it's hard. It's hard to pick a top 5, but we were able to narrow it down to 5. So we're going to start from the 5th one and then go all the way up to our top favorite song in Final Fantasy X. So Cody, I'll go ahead and open it up to you. Why don't you tell us your number 5?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. My number 5, I'm going to go ahead and say it, is Otherworld. Now, before you give me some crap for it, I will go ahead and say this does not belong in a Final Fantasy game at all. Like, anywhere near it. And I know it, and I respect it, but you got to picture the time and the time capsule that this is for me, because I was that metalhead in high school. So when this thing starts blaring, and you're in the water and you see Titus and he's sitting there, they're about to play Blitzball, but I forget what the actual thing is called. You see it filling up with water with that amazing cutscene, Auron coming in and that kind of thing. I'm like, okay, we're about to go on a journey here, aren't we? So it's just it does not belong on this soundtrack, and I naysay in any Final Fantasy game ever, but damn does it get me.
It's funny because I almost picked it. I really did. And I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that about a few of your songs. But yeah, Otherworld is interesting because, I think it's the first time. No, I think they used real music in the main sequences in 8 and 9 as well. But they were artists that were, I think, just exclusive to Japan. And this was the first time I had heard anything that was outside of that. And forgive me if I'm mispronouncing the name, but I believe it's Rammstein, who sings this.
I know who you're talking about.
Is
it them, really?
It is. And I looked it up.
No way.
I was morbidly curious. I'm like, is this like an original song or did they pull this from somewhere? Yeah. So it is a real artist who makes real music that sounds exactly like this.
Oh, I know. I'm familiar.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I mean, it's a good track. It's so fitting for the chaos and destruction that, you know, sin causes throughout this game. And it really is. I mean, it's a great pick. So I'm not a naysayer. I'm with you 100%. I think it's a good one. My 5 kind of falls on the opposite end of the spectrum. So my number 5 was the Prelude. And I like this one particularly because of how different it was done. So in, you know, all the previous Final Fantasies, most of the time, you heard the Prelude right at the beginning of the game. So you chose, you know, new game or whatever it may be, and that's where you heard it. And then you usually didn't hear it again until either the end of the game, or maybe if there was like a prologue that kind of launched you into the game, you'd hear it. But other than that, it was pretty quiet. And this one was kind of it was deceptive because it doesn't start off as the Prelude. You know, it's this like little electronic music. You just start out the game and you're walking off the boat as Tidus, and you have no clue what's going on. The only thing you know is that he's this beloved blitzball player, and everybody wants to talk with him and have him sign, you know, their little blitzballs and things like that, and take pictures with them. And you hear this like electronic music in the background, and it's really catchy, it's really upbeat, and then out of nowhere, it's like they just throw the Prelude in there, and it fits so well. I mean, it's like, I was like, how did they do that? It's so good. Yeah, I mean, it, you know, the Prelude was what? It was usually like played on a piano, and it was usually very melodic and slow. And yeah, it felt, you know, somber almost. And now it felt very upbeat and peppy, and very much like Tidus's personality throughout at least the beginning portions of the game.
No, I would completely agree with that. Whenever this came on, I was like, wait, is that the music? Because like I've heard this before, like going back, like I didn't realize that the Prelude was quote unquote the Prelude. Like, yeah, at the time of playing it, I didn't know. It's a catchy tune, you know, it's setting up the world so many of these tracks are just world building tracks, right? You know, like just each ecosystem that you end up visiting, they do that really well. And this is kind of not setting the tone of Xanarkin, but it's just of the situation, the mood, the vibe of the people, what you're going through as a character, and that kind of thing. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because this works well because the Prelude is my number 4. So I can't, I'm not going to say anything bad about it. But like listening back to it, I'm like, oh wait, that is the music. It's the music that plays right before like the main title card of like 7, 8, 9, you know. So for them to kind of give it, like looking at it after going back and playing those older games, like hearing it in this light, it's really well done. I like that they threw it in there kind of before the game got ramped up. That way it can still be called the Prelude. But I thought it was really interesting and kind of fun take on, like you said, something that's typically a little bit slower than what they made it into for 10.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned something that kind of resonated there, was that it's upbeat and fun, and it's all before all the stuff you start finding out about, you know, what's going to happen. And that's what I love about it, you know, and I love about game music in general is, you know, it's meant to adjust the atmosphere and let you know, how are the people feeling? Because you can't just go into the game and ask them. You can kind of sort of sense the energy, but the music really seals the deal.
Yeah, it really does. The whole walk up. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you nailed it. I'd just be regurgitating everything that you just said.
Sure. So my number 4 was actually the traveling company. This is probably bizarre for a lot of people, and I will admit that some of this comes with some bias, and I'll explain in a second here. But
okay.
The traveling company is the music that plays just when you reach a part of the game where you have to travel by these creatures called shoe puffs, and that was what did it for me. Yeah, it was. I don't know what it was about shoe puffs. Or maybe it was the way the guy was like, would you like to take a ride on my wondrous shoe puff?
Shoe puff?
Yeah. I don't know. Just something about it. I just really love that area. I believe it took place shortly after there was a pretty big event. And I'm trying to be not so spoilery because I don't want to give like every single detail away, but I guess I probably should have forewarned beforehand. There will probably be some spoilers as we go through these. So if you planned on playing Final Fantasy X, here's your spoiler warning in the middle of it.
Yeah, I was about to say, thanks for giving me a heads up.
Yeah. It comes after a part that gets pretty stressful, and it just kind of calms it back down again. The music is very soothing. And like I said, this guy, all this stuff is going on in the world, everything that's happening and stuff like that. And it's funny that I'm talking about it now, especially with what's going on in our world. But he just tries to keep this sense of normalcy, right? It's like, yes, sin is attacking. Yes, all this stuff is going on. But I still have a shoe puff company to run. Do you need to travel? I'm here for you.
I got bills to pay.
Yeah, it's like you know what? If the world stays together, I still got stuff I got to take care of when this is done. If the world falls apart, who cares? I won't be here for it anyways. But in the meantime, you want to take a ride on my shoe puff?
And how can you say no to a shoe puff?
I know.
I mean, just the name shoe puff is...
It's fun, right? It is such a fun word. I think I might try and talk my wife into naming my second son Shoe Puff. We'll see if she goes for it.
I want to be there for that conversation. Maybe
I'll FaceTime you in and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Just set me in a corner because right. Oh God, I don't even want to know. Yeah, I couldn't place when this track took place. I'll be honest. Mm-hmm. I thought it took place. I have a visual in my head of where I thought it was took place. I thought it was like much later game. When I say like much later game, if memory serves, it's been a minute. Mm-hmm. There's like a save station / hut right before there's a section where you can, if you want, ride a chocobo. I thought it was like way back then.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, and I'm kind of racking the deep parts of my brain, but this is after a pretty deep conversation that Tidus and Yuna have on the beach. They're talking about some real deep stuff. Yeah.
See, I remember it. I was in a ballpark, but in a different city. Okay, because I was thinking it was a conversation between those two, and then because another one happens like right there, doesn't it? About kind of what's going to happen in the end game to a degree.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so All right. I was close, damn it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
Another thing that I want to point out about your track is that it's an interesting track. It doesn't do a whole lot for me, but the one thing that really drives this track for me is the clever use of the drum, the clapping, and the triangle.
Oh,
That's in
yes.
it.
Yep.
That just makes it really unique, and it's the only thing to me that actually, because it's not a bad track, but it's the only thing that makes it kind of stand out to me. Apart from some of the other tracks that we're talking about on our list here.
Yeah, this one, I knew this one would be a subtle one. And, people listening to this will probably think like, why would you ever pick that when there's so many other good ones? But it's more of, I guess, where it sits in the game. This one is definitely less about the song itself and more about kind of what's going on at the time. And
right.
Probably why it resonated. And then again, the bias totally to the Shoe Puffs.
Yeah, absolutely. How could you not? Shoe Puff gets a pass every time.
All right, man. Shoot me up with number 3. Let's hear it.
All right. Since you're the expert on this, and also to everyone listening, we've been working on this show for a long time, so some of these notes are old. So I don't have as many notes for this one, so I'm going to need your help with this one. My number 3 is Spear and Scenery. Spear and Scenery, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And here's what I will say, because like I told you and everyone else, how I listened to this track, I had one word note for it: forgettable. That was it. Having said that, it was this track that was stuck in my head the next 2 damn weeks. Like, it was insane. I was like, what is this track? And then I couldn't find out what track it is because, again, I put down forgettable. And so then I had to go listen to most of the soundtrack again to see if I can figure out which track this is that I couldn't get out of my head so I can put it on my list. So I don't know what it is about this track at all that drew me to it. It has other themes in it that we're going to get to as we go down my list that really help build what the song is. It is the one song out of the entire soundtrack, more than my number 1, that I cannot get out of my head once I listen to it.
Yeah, this one's a good one. It's very similar to my number 2. The two of them kind of work hand in hand with one another, if I remember correctly. But
it does.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that really defines, I guess, the gravity of this game. And I think a lot of people who either have given up on it or who have not, played through and understood this story from beginning to end are missing that gravity. And this song, if I were to say, like, how would you describe Final Fantasy X if you had to pick one track? Even though this one isn't on my list and it's not, part of that, it would be this song. So yeah, I think it was a great pick. You really got a good one with that for sure.
Yeah, the way I did mine, and you and I discussed this a little bit, was these are some of my favorite tracks, but these are also some of the tracks, minus Otherworld, that are Final Fantasy. Like, when I think of Final Fantasy X, these are the tracks that come to mind. Yes. So that's kind of how I compiled this. So yes, that's why it is here, because I'd be remiss if I didn't.
Right. Yeah, my number 3 is pretty, I probably, I guess, evident. And there's two reasons why it's on my list. So my number 3 is the Thunder Plains, and the reasons that it's on my list is because I did the Thunderbolt challenge to get one of the parts to a celestial weapon. Are you familiar with that by any chance? Okay.
I have seen that video, sir.
Oh, that is right. I forgot. I was streaming when I did that. That's correct.
Yes, you were, and it's because of that. This is the track where my only note was "fuck the Thunder Plains," Peter, because I don't know how you, in good conscience, like if you were a changed man when you were on those Thunder Plains or what. Because if I was in your shoes, I could not have experienced what you went through. So you tell the audience, because I already know this damn story.
Yeah. I wanted to platinum this game. It was like, near and dear to my heart. I need to get this platinum. And one of the celestial weapon challenges to get part of it is to dodge lightning off the Thunder Plains 200 times in a row.
Yep.
If it was not for somebody in chat, it might have even been Aerith at the time, who is a near and dear friend to me, and she is a huge Final Fantasy fan. I believe she's the one who told me that, the lightning in certain spots strikes at the same spot every time. You just have to keep walking over it. So I was like, okay, cool. So I did that. And, there was a few times I messed up here and there, got to like 50 or 75, not a big deal. I have a video clip saved. I got to 198 and I messed it up. And yes, I remember my soul leaving my body at that point. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it.
That begs the question, why is it on your list?
Because
PTSD alone.
Yeah. So yeah, right. Outside of the fact that it's just burned into my brain at this point, right?
Okay. That checks out.
It's one of those things where this is what I talk about when I say, like, if a game does not have a good soundtrack, then you will not play it for longer than, X amount of hours. I sat there and did this Thunder Plains challenge for, it had to have been 2.5, 3 hours worth of trying before I got it. And I never got tired of the music once. I was like, I'm sitting there counting up to 110, 115, 120. And I'm like, da, 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 da. And I'm just like totally enjoying it. And even though it felt very masochistic of me to keep getting struck by lightning, it's fun, it's bubbly, and I just really love it. It's such a good track.
Now that I can understand and appreciate your reasoning more, because it does anything that you can listen to that long straight and not specifically get tired of. There's some magic to that. I mean, as much as I just took a massive dump all over it, it's not the track itself that I'm taking a dump on. I'm taking a dump on questioning your reasoning, and your sanity on it. But no, the track is fun. It's light. I don't necessarily know if it belongs there or if I expect that track there, but I don't necessarily know where I would have put it otherwise. Like we were talking earlier about tone setting and that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if that track fits that environment too well, but at the same time, I didn't spend like 2 hours in it the way you did. So that's just my opinion on it.
Sure.
I don't know what I would have put in its place either. So I can't take anything away from it. Anything that you can listen to for that long, good on you.
It's one of those things where you're absolutely right. If you were out of context, if you were just looking at this from a bird's eye view down at the track and at the stage that or the area that you're at, it does not fit. It shouldn't fit. But for some reason that, hopping along the way that, Titus's gait is as he goes along, The way that it feels like you're kind of hopping along the Thunder Plains, and that's what I feel like I hear when I hear this music. It's like hopping. It's like, the music just bounces from note to note, and it works really well.
We'll go with that. Sweet. All right, cool. So next is my number 2, and these are the two that I didn't have to think about. These were immediately my number 1 and my number 2. Before I even listened to the soundtrack at all, these are the 2 tracks I knew the name of, and I knew immediately what they were. Number 2 for me is Yuna's theme. And I'll revisit this conversation when we get to my number 1, because I feel the same about both of these titles. And I would like your opinion on this, but a large chunk of this soundtrack would not be as good if it wasn't for Yuna's theme and my number 1 pick. Because Yuna's theme and my number 1 pick are both peppered throughout at least half the soundtrack in some way, shape, or form. It's just gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And any other song, in my opinion, that it's in, like, for example, my number 3, it's in there. It's part of it. That's the actual part that was stuck in my head, not the rest of it. It was the Yuna's theme part of it. But it was very specifically that version of Yuna's theme that was stuck. It's gorgeous. This track is, along with my number 1 a little bit more so, but from a gameplay standpoint, and we'll get there. From a gameplay standpoint, this track is this game for me.
Sure. Yeah. The thing that you mentioned is not uncommon for the Final Fantasy games, where it's almost like they theme the music around one specific track. For 10, it's Yuna's theme. For 8, it was the Eyes on Me theme. And for 9, it was the theme to that place. I forget what the name of it is now. Gosh. It'll come to me. But, if you listen to the main theme and then you listen to all of the soundtrack, you'll notice that it's, like you said, peppered along throughout in different like mixes and things like that. Sounds a little different, but it's there. I mean, I can see why you would put this. Yuna's theme is gorgeous. It fits really well with her character and who she is. And I always like character themes. It's surprising that I didn't put any on my list, and not to say that I probably didn't consider it, but yeah, character themes are always a win in my book.
Oh yeah, character themes in general are good. I was looking through the list as I was doing it, obviously, and I was surprised like some characters didn't get themes and some did, and I was just like, all right, well, whatever. But yeah, it's a beautiful track that I could gush like for hours about, but we don't got hours, so I'll just wrap it up with that there. This track is definitely worth a listen to, and it is, for me, synonymous with Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, my number 2 is one of those songs, actually. One of the songs that has this in it.
Oh, it's my first note, trust me.
Yeah. So my number 2 song is Someday the Dream Will End. And this one and my number 1 song, it's like you said, I didn't have to think about it as far as what was going in number 1 and number 2. I did have to think about which one was going where. That was by far, I must have sat and thought about this for days on where I was going to put these two, because I went back and forth about them. I love them both for two very different reasons. But Someday the Dream Will End is this really powerful rendition of the Eunice theme that, I mean, it hits hard and deep, and where it is in the game, it makes me emotional every single time. I've mentioned this before to you, at least. People who are listening probably don't know this, but I've never cried on stream for any game's emotions except for in Final Fantasy X. And this song is one of the reasons why. It's right at the pinnacle of everything. And holy cow, does it hit. Thoughts on it? What did you think?
I agree with you completely tonally, because it does take place late game. And that's when we are wrapping things up with what might not be the prettiest of bows that we wanted. Yes. And we know that that's the direction this is going, and we're like, oh shit, man, I don't want it to be this way, but we accept it because we love what who the characters are. And everything. And you're right, it does hit on all those notes. And you're right, because as the song goes, it's doing its thing, it has its own melodies. But once the Eunice theme kicks in, it just takes that song to a completely new level. And I don't know how or why, but it just does. It's a great version of that theme. I will say I do have one small critique, because I'm weird. I used to be in band back in the day, and there are certain things that I can't unhear. For whatever reason, in the song, periodically, there's this weird audio cue that happens like every third beat that sticks out like a sore thumb to me, and to me is kind of distracting from just listening to the track straight. Now, seeing it on screen, I never noticed it at all. Like being wrapped up in the emotions of playing the game and that kind of stuff. But as a standalone track, when I was going through it, there was still just this weird, I can't really describe it, but this weird audio note or whatever that happens on the third beat where I'm like, that's really distracting from what is otherwise a very immersive track. So that's my only asterisk next to it's a great track, is that by itself to me is distracting. But in the context of the moment, no, it's great.
That's crazy. I'm gonna have to listen again and hear if I can hear that audio cue, because I'm very curious now. But just to talk about the emotion, just whenever you were talking about it, and then you were like, you said that Eunice theme kicked in. I'm not kidding you. I got chills on my body. Like that's how. Yes, that's how powerful this song is. It's like I can just talking about it. I hear it in my head. When I hear it in my head, I can see the scenes that are happening at the time. And when I see the scenes, it's just like, oh, this game rocks me to my core.
Yeah. It'll do that.
Yeah. We've arrived.
Okay. This was my number 2, but I changed it. My number 1 is at Xanarkin. It's also just called Xanarkin. You can find it as either if you're looking on YouTube or Spotify or whatever.
Literally all you have to search. Just put in Xanarkin and this will come up.
Oh, does it really? Cool.
Oh my gosh, yes. This is like, it's very well known.
Okay. for those of you who haven't played the game, here's how the game starts. And it's not a story related thing. There's no spoilers here. But you turn on your PlayStation. I would turn on my PlayStation 2. And immediately I'm met with that classic boot up theme from the PlayStation. And then, the PlayStation 2 noise. And then the piano starts. And that piano is
everything.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It sets the tone for the game so much. Yeah. And they even show that, which I can't say that because spoilers. Crap.
No, it's okay. We're at number 1. Even though we were midway through, we gave the warning. If you're here and you haven't played Final Fantasy X, we're sorry, but
okay,
go for it.
Sorry, because I'm about to rip you a new one here. Because I didn't like whenever you get to the point of the game where you see that opening, it blew my mind. Like high school Cody mind, or not high school Cody, but college Cody mind blown, because I was like, I didn't think this was in the game. I never expected to see this, and to get to the realization that this is the end of the game, and it is just Titus, however you want to say it, telling us what everything has led to right here. And then when you hear that theme again, because of everything that you've experienced, you understand the tone and the weight of this track so much more than you did. And for me, as I was playing it, to not know that, just to be, that was part of my morning routine, man. Just wake up, turn on my PlayStation, go brush my teeth. By that time, the menu music had started, and off I go. So to have that huge revelation that this was actually in the game the whole time, not just a little throwaway, really is what kind of puts it at number 1. Like Yuna's theme, it is peppered throughout other tracks as well. I do think that the soundtrack would be drastically different if At Xanarkin or Xanarkin and Yuna's theme were not a part of the soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the same boat, man. You see that opening scene, you see, Aaron, Titus's, and Yuna's weapons just sitting there, and they're just kind of off on the side, and they kind of look defeated. You don't really know why. You think like you said, they programmed it in for a nice little intro video to kind of tell you like, hey, this is going to be a deep story. This is not like what we've done in the past. There's no high fantasy elements here. We're gonna be hitting some deep notes. But yeah, you realize that up until that point, you had been playing basically the memories that he had experienced until you got there, and you're like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm at that point. It's like
yeah, and that's what's weird, because like once that got revealed, I honestly, like, even though I never realized that, like, up until that moment, and like you said, you didn't really either, I then felt uneasy to continue. Like, this is uncharted territory, even though I didn't know it. Everything's been uncharted territory, but it made it feel like everything that happened after that, and a lot happened after that, everything had more weight to it because of that.
Yeah, it's like, before it's like, okay, I was just playing through what had already happened, but now, from this point forward, I'm making the decisions. I'm the one who's controlling what happens here, you know? And it's like, at the same time, you don't have control. It's a very confusing and heart-wrenching time. When that piano plays along with the emotions that you're feeling at the time, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that's because, again, we talk apparently seemingly all the time about mood setting, stage setting, that kind of stuff. This does it with a bullet for that moment, similar in a way, but drastically differently than your number 2, Someday the Dream Will End, where it defines that moment. Because at that point, when you're playing the game, there is no dialogue. When the main video starts up and the intro for 10 starts, before you even get to the start menu, you hear the main character ask us to listen to his story. There may not be much time. And that's all there. But when you're playing it in the game, not a word is spoken. And it's just the piano, and it's just these PlayStation 2 graphics, and looking at it, and it's a gorgeous shot, and knowing where you are and not knowing that you're safe or anything. Oh, it's just it's a great set piece.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I love your number 1. I think it's a great pick, and I believe that many people would agree. There's so many renditions of this song. People have done covers of it. It's probably one of the top covered songs of Final Fantasy X that I've seen. If you look up anything, Final Fantasy X cover, To Xanarkand comes up every single time.
And I know someone's going to say, oh, I took the safe bet by putting Xanarkand, but screw you guys. That's not the safe bet at all, because that's it might be deemed safe, but that is a really important track.
It is. And there's, calling it safe, I get why somebody would say that, but there's a reason why. I mean, it defines this game.
Yeah. All right, let's get on with your number 1.
Okay, so my number 1 kind of takes a bit of a turn. We talked about all the hot and heavy, or I guess not the hot and heavy, but the heavy and deep. Yeah, this game is anything but hot and heavy. We talked about the heavy, the deep, the emotional, and everything like that. I kind of flipped the script a little bit with my number 1. My number 1 is actually Besaid.
Yeah.
Besaid Island is an interesting part of the game for me, because all of that stuff from the intro is now done and over with, and Tidus finds himself washed up on this island. He doesn't recognize the people. He doesn't recognize the location. He doesn't really know what's going on. He has no understanding of anything. But all the while that's happening, he just meets his first main character of the game. This song comes on, and I heard it for the first time. I was like, I fell in love with it instantly. It's one of those tracks that I could listen to this forever. If I had to strip away every other song in this game, I would want to leave this one, because it's so good. There's so many elements to it, from the percussion and the way that it's structured. It all fits really well for this island life. again, it's another one of those deceptive ones where it's like, oh, this is fine. Everything is good. The song is upbeat. I know how I'm feeling. You haven't met Yuna yet, and you don't know what's going on in the world. So it's like you just don't understand anything until, much later. But yeah, it's very refreshing. When I hear it, I can feel the breeze of an island. It's like one of those kind of situations. I would pop this on, being on a beach myself and be like, oh yeah, this fits. It's one of those songs, it doesn't, there's no real tie-ins as far as, what it means for the game or anything like that. This is certainly not to Xanarkand, or anything else like that. It's just a fun, upbeat song. This is the only one I'll mention it to. When you listen to the remixed version of it from the remakes, it's the only one that really doesn't get touched all that much because it's pure perfection. It like they changed a few things, but they're minor details. The main melody and everything like that doesn't change. An example of one that does change pretty drastically is the Thunder Plains. So to me, that speaks a lot for the song itself. They were like, you know what? This is already a good song. Let's add a little bit more, depth to it or something like that. But we're going to keep the general premise because it's that good. So yeah, that was my number one.
All right, I'll give it to you because Besaid, not that it's a competition, but I can understand why. It was on my top 5. Mm-hmm. So I will get it for that. Or it wasn't on my top 5, but it was a top 5 contender. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you why. Nothing against it or anything like that, but every note that you're hitting is right. Because you are on an island. At this point in the game, because we are washed up, we are an alien in a strange world. And all we know is we have a blitzball coming at our head, and we're like, all right, well, there's one constant. So we have that for comfort. But we get the shot of Waka sitting there on the beach. It does really, really, really set the tone. And honestly, sets the stage to a degree as you're starting the game. Yeah, as Xanarkand takes place before the game, technically, if you want to view it from that angle. But this is when the game really starts. We're done setting the story with what happened in Xanarkand and everything. And this is them taking the training wheels off and be like, all right, it's yours. Play, experience, to be met with this happy island tune for your first couple of hours, really, as you're going through and exploring, I think is nice, especially when we talk, hell, even mid-game, when tone and story starts to shift, it sets up the world, what the world was like, not before Sin, but before the Sin attacks started happening and wrapping up where they were. That the people on this island are happy, pleasant, nonviolent, they're just islanders. That's it. And all of that, not through talking to any of them, because you can only talk to 2 of them anyway, but because of the music. And so it does a really good job of setting the stage for us.
Yeah, the whole time you're on that island, you don't get any inkling that anything is wrong, that these people have experienced sin before in the past, and that's why they live in such modest accommodations and things like that. You don't know anything about all of that. They do a good job with keeping it quiet for a while. It's not too long because you find out pretty quickly what's going on. But in the meantime,
well, how many years before this game do we know? How many years before had Sin attacked before?
I think they mentioned that it's every 1,000 years that it typically happens, but I don't remember when the last attack was in relation to when you start the game. That's actually
because I didn't know if it was I'm asking because I don't remember. Wasn't Jekt doing that? Jekt and Orin back in the day?
Yes, yeah. So Jekt, Orin, and Braska.
Yeah, I was blanking on Braska's name, and that's Yuna's dad. So you got to think a generation, right?
Yeah, you're right. So it couldn't have been that long ago, and I don't think we know what ended up happening. It sounded like they quelled Sin, but they did not quite put him out completely, which is why he's coming back so quickly.
Okay, that would check out. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
No, you're good. We made it, man. That's our top 5. We've got some good ones on there. I think that if someone were to take, outside of the fact that I think one of ours is duplicated, If they were to take those 9 tracks that aren't duplicated and just listen to those 10, I feel like they'd have a good idea of what makes Final Fantasy X tick.
I'm going to completely agree with you, except I'm going to say 8 and say don't listen to Otherworld.
Yeah.
You will not get a good taste.
Yeah, Otherworld is interesting. You have to like that kind of music. I mean, I don't particularly like it, but
no, I know it's not your type.
I can appreciate a little bit of Otherworld in my life. So, any final thoughts about Final Fantasy X? You said you had, I know, an honorable mention that you were talking about.
I do. It's just a note
Okay.
Of something that, because again, I listened to the entire soundtrack, and there's one track that I want to give an honorable mention to in terms of, like we're talking about world building, and it's a Hymn of the Faith, or also known as Song of Prayer. And I took a note, and I would like to read the note to you verbatim and tell you my story with this. I just said, "Oh my God, where is the singing come from? It doesn't matter. You hear it, and you may be in this alien place, but you understand its reverence. This is a holy site you are in, and you should feel privileged to do so. The song sets the mood on its own." Okay, which I stand by to this day. Then 4 hours later, I get to Song of Prayer Anima, the 11th Song of Prayer. And my only note is, doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I think.
But Hymn of Faith is an honorable mention on just a great world building track on that. But that's all I have.
It's really funny because I feel like Hymn of Faith, I must admit that before this conversation right here, right now, I never questioned where the voice was coming from.
Really?
But no, I just assumed that you were inside of a temple and it was like the people in the temple, praying, and that was their prayer. But if you ever get a chance, look up the lyrics to that, because they are actual things that they're saying. It's an interesting prayer, and then practice it in the shower where the acoustics are really good.
No, my walls are too thin, sir. I will not subject my neighbors to that.
They'll be like, "Oh God, Cody's starting a cult in the house. Yeah. We're going to have him evicted."
I'm already the weird neighbor, and they just moved in like this week, so let's not do that at least yet. But I will listen to that tonight, probably.
Right. Well, Cody, I appreciate you, man. This has been a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to our next one for sure. I want to thank all the listeners who happen to come by, whether you're friends, whether you're brand new. We hope that you appreciate what we're trying to do here. And, as Cody mentioned before, if you like it, subscribe. That's probably the best way you can support us, at the time that this is being recorded. So yeah, just send it to your friends, anybody who likes listening to talks about music, talks about video games, talks about music and video games. Make sure you give us a subscribe and let us know how we're doing.
I think that's about it for us, right?
Yeah, we're going to head out here. Do we want to talk about what our next game is going to be, or do we want to keep it like a total mystery until the next time?
I don't know what you're thinking, because we have a list of things that we're doing. We don't know number 3 yet, but I'm looking at number 2, and I'm excited to do some work.
I know you are. Fun fact, and I'll probably mention this again when we record it, but this was how we met. I was streaming this particular game. It was a later rendition of this game. You popped in my stream and were like, "I'm a huge fan," and that was it. The rest is history. We became friends after that. All right, we'll leave it a surprise.
We'll do that.
Yeah, we'll let the listeners be in suspense until our next one. But I can tell you the next one's a doozy. Another rough one where we're gonna have a hard time picking some top 5s out of that. But
oh God, yeah, this is gonna be a nightmare. I'm already looking at it. So yeah. All right, guys. We hope you tune in next time.
Thanks, Cody. I appreciate it, man, and see you guys all later.